Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. My name is Rafael Cardenas. I'm a senior software engineer at Hiro. Today, I'm going to talk about the Stacks API, the developer roadmap that we have, and some of the recent improvements that we made to it. The agenda today would be, first, I'm going to give a very quick recap on what the API is and what it does and what its purpose is. Next, I'm going to talk about recent improvements that we made to the API to make it more performant, faster, and more useful for developers. And lastly, I'm going to talk about future plans that we have, some cool stuff that we're going to be adding to it. So to start off, let's recap some of the things that we built in the last couple months. Sorry, the recap on the API first. I'm going to talk about briefly what the API is. The API is a blockchain indexer, which means that it takes the events from the chain and indexes them into a Postgres database, which we then use to open up JSON endpoints so that developers can query historical chain data. And we also provide node RPC forwarding, which means if developers want to broadcast transactions or make contract calls, the API allows them to do so without having to run a node themselves. This is a very brief diagram of the current API architecture. As you can see in the center, we have the blockchain API that consumes events from Stacks nodes. These events, again, are everything that happens on the chain, so blocks, microblocks, transactions, etc. We then take those events and we put them in a database, as you can see on the right-hand side. And then we use that database to power up HTTP endpoints so that developers can query that same data. We also offer WebSocket servers so that if developers are interested in receiving real-time events, they can do so through these servers. And this is how the API works today. So just to recap, some of the data that is available through the API are blocks, microblocks, transactions, contracts, NFTs, etc. Right now, during the past 30 days, for example, we've served around 330 million requests, which is obviously a lot of traffic. And we work very, very hard to be able to increase this capacity so that more developers that are joining the Stacks ecosystem can use this API to power their applications and everything that they want to build on the ecosystem. So in order to do that, I'm going to give you a very quick recap on the improvements that we've made recently to the API to, again, make it faster and more useful for developers. I'm going to talk about 4 key things that we've added. First, we've done a lot of BNS name improvements, which I'm sure you know, it's something that is really, really popular right now in the chain. We also added support for NFT WebSocket events. I'm going to give that detail shortly. We've also added some endpoints that give you statistics on the mempool and the current traffic of the chain. And lastly, improvements on the event import process. So for BNS names, we've done a very important thing. So first of all, we've improved how we support names that existed from Stacks 1.0 chain. So we greatly improved the name import process. We've recalculated all the expirations to make sure that we display them correctly. We also manage subdomains in the best way possible. This comes with some upgrades to how we handle chain attachments. So if you're familiar with BNS, this is a key component for names to work and subdomains to work as well. So we've added support for batched updates on attachments in the database. We've also increased and improved the consistency in which we show the zone files that are available on the chain. And we've also added support for newer marketplace use cases. So I'm sure you know BNS has been trading a lot on marketplaces. We've added support for escrow contracts and for some innovative stuff that is happening, which, for example, is registering and transferring a name in a single transaction. Lastly, we've done a lot of performance improvements. We've added caching, table optimizations, etc. For NFT sockets, we've added 3 new channels so that you can consume NFT events faster and more conveniently. So first, you can subscribe to all of the event updates that happen on the chain. You can get every mint, every transfer, every burn on the chain. You can also filter that via collection. So if you're only interested in a collection, you can do that. And also if you're interested in assets as well, individual NFTs. For mempool, we've added a statistics endpoint that gives you the current traffic in the chain, basically. So we can group this traffic by transaction types, contract calls, transfers, etc. We can group them also by transaction age, depending on block count. And we also give you percentile so that you can do some statistics analysis, and also by fee rate. And we provide all of these statistics through the Prometheus endpoints that we currently have. For event import, right now, in order for you to run an API node, you need to import the chain data in a TSV file. This process used to take around 18 hours, and now it takes like 4 hours, which is a massive improvement. And this also has added some BNSV1 improvements and also prune mode in order for you to focus only on the data that is most relevant today. So this is our future plans for the API. We've added some cool stuff, but this is what we're going to be building next. We're focusing on 3 key things. First of all, we're adding Stacks 2.1 support. I'm sure you all know, we've had some great sessions about it today. So the API is adding support for this, of course. Also for subnets, which is the scaling solution for Stacks. And lastly, we have a big effort to divide the API into microservices that can allow developers to choose the components that they want to use for their applications. So I'm going to dive in a little detail about this. So first, Stacks 2.1. Stacks 2.1 brings about POX2, so Proof of Transfer 2. This contract is the new implementation of this process. We're going to be adding support for this on the API, of course. Also, we're going to add the new transaction types that are available in Stacks 2.1 and everything else that comes with it. Our goal is to have this available mid-Q4 as a release, but definitely ready, of course, when Stacks 2.1 hits mainnet, so that the change is completely transparent for developers and absolutely 100% backwards compatible for the rest of the chain history. For subnets, our goal is to be able to provide an API that you can run alongside the L1 chain, but also alongside a subnet chain. So we're going to make this completely subnet node compatible. You'll be able to see token deposits, withdrawals. We're going to add new endpoints so that you can filter these out if you need them. And we're also including this subnet support in Clarinet Integrate, which I'm sure you know if you're a developer. Clarinet Integrate is very useful for developing on Stacks. So it will have support for launching a subnet node and a subnet API as well. Lastly, microservices. So I'm sure you know the API right now is a great component. It has a lot of power, but it's also becoming a little bit complex in what it does because it has to do a lot of different things. So our goal is to keep the API as a core component on the ecosystem that you can use to index chain data, and then split up the different features into microservices that you can pick and choose for your specific application. So first of all, we're adding some new exciting endpoints that bring about the compatibility between Bitcoin and Stacks. So for example, if you want to derive addresses between them, if you want to query data across the chains, we're going to be adding a lot of endpoints for you to do this. And we'll be providing them via a microservice. We're also adding the token metadata service, which is this specific service that gives you information about NFT metadata, FT metadata, and it keeps track of metadata updates via SIP19 and also is compatible with SIP16 standards. It will give you localized data. It will give you the addresses, IPFS images translated into HTTP URL so you can call them, etc. Next, we're adding a great set of endpoints that will allow you to interact with Clarity via JSON only, which means right now, if you want to call a function on a contract, you need to first encode the arguments to a Clarity value and then send that value into a node. So this service will allow you to do this via JSON only and also give you the results in JSON. We're also adding some caching to this and some other cool things so that you can make sure that it's performant and that you don't have to add manual support for these encoding and decoding, especially if you're not developing your application in JavaScript or in other languages, which we don't have tools for right now. We're also spinning off the WebSockets into a separate service, which means that the WebSocket server and Socket.io, our goal is to have it in an individual service that is able to be tuned for the most performance for these events. And developers will be able to either serve them in their own environment or use our own through this dedicated service. Lastly, we're going to be moving Rosetta out of the core API into its own microservices. And this would also be very useful, for example, for some exchanges or applications that rely heavily on Rosetta because they also use other chains. So they'll be able to just run the endpoints that they need or use the Hiro provided service to do just that. So this is a quick timeline of the current goals that we have. So in Q3, we released the improvements that I already discussed, BNS, NFT sockets, event import improvements, and mempool stats. And for Q4, our goal is to finish up Stacks 2.1 support, subnet support, and also start adding the first microservices. We will begin with the Bitcoin and Stacks endpoints. We're going to be adding the Clarity JSON service as well. That is our goal. And then for Q1, we'll be pushing up some of the REST microservices as well. So if you have any questions about any of these, or if you want to reach out to us, please make sure to join our Discord. You can reach us out from there or through our GitHub repositories. We're always very receptive of community opinions and what their priorities are. So thank you so much. I hope this talk was useful and thank you for being here.